So it's pretty evident that this thing needs some love. As you can see, the valve seats are rusted. Same with the valve guides. And then the intake is just corroded from all the water that was sitting in there. The exhaust isn't any better, so we're gonna take this thing over to the vapor blaster and work our magic. So I just got done vapor blasting this thing. Take a look at the finish on it now. I don't know if this light's really doing it justice, but it really does look incredible.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be part 2 of the KLX110 build, and man, I have been waiting for this day for a while. So we've had everything for the engine here for the past 2 weeks, except for one part, and that part finally came in. So we've got everything that we need to put this thing back together, finally. All the parts laid out, and she's ready to be assembled. And here's the part we've been waiting on for over 2 weeks. And that is the 4-speed shift drum. Alright, so the first thing that we have to do is put the bearings in the cases behind me. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a trick if you're doing this at home and you don't have, a torch or don't want to set the cases out in the sun for a couple hours. This will speed up the process quite a bit. Okay, so as you can see, I've got all the bearings out of the cases. I went ahead and did that, not necessarily because they had to be replaced, but because I went ahead and vapor blasted these cases to make them look better than new. So obviously the crank bearings are on the crank, they don't come off, but the transmission bearings all need to be replaced, and I'm going to go ahead and put these things on my little hot plate. You can get this at Walmart or at Amazon, and what you do is just set both cases up there, turn it on max heat, and let them sit there for probably, I would say, 15 minutes it would take to get them up to temperature. And then once they're up there, you can just drop the bearings right in. There's no need to heat them up with a torch. Now the other option is you could always put these in the oven. That works too, but if you don't want your wife getting mad at you, this is a pretty good garage option for you.
If you're not familiar, this stuff is awesome. And it smells like cinnamon. So with this engine, as with most dirt bikes these days, there's no center case gasket. Obviously that'd be a lot easier, but most brands went away with that. It's usually just Honda and some of the KTM 2-strokes, most of the 2-strokes that use it. But on this, there's actually, you have to use your own gasket maker. Now, what some people do is they'll just take their finger and spread it across the whole thing. What I like to do is just put like a small little dab on my finger and basically just tap it all the way around. It'll make a nice even coat without using too much, and that way you don't have a ton of extra gasket material left over when you actually do put the cases together. Always keep an X-Acto knife around because it will clog up if you've used it before. There we go. Alright, so now that you've got gasket sealer all over this case, you're probably going to need to heat up the bearing race area so that it'll slide onto the crankshaft. Now with this bike, again, there's no bearing in there. Normally there would be, and you just slide it onto the cranks. You'd have to heat up the crank and the bearing, or excuse me, the crank bearing and the cases. But in this case, you have to heat up the case quite a bit actually so that it'll slide over the crank bearing. Always take your case bolts, put just a little bit of grease on the tip of them, where the threads are, so that they don't ever seize. You're probably not going to be in here very often, so it's not a bad idea to grease them. Now with me, along with pretty much everybody that's ever built an engine, it's very hard to keep track of where these bolts specifically go. So a little trick that you can use is they're always going to stick, no matter how long they are, they're always going to stick out the same amount. So if I put this bolt in there, you can see it's sticking out way too far. If I take this bolt, it'll stick out that far, which means this bolt has to stick out that far as well wherever it goes. It's going to be right over here. See that? Same distance. It's a little trick you can use in case you have no idea where the case bolts are or where they go. Now, since I'm in a race against the clock to get this glue set onto the other case and make sure that they don't dry without being in contact, I'm going to use a gun. But I have it set on the lowest torque setting, so what I'll be doing is just driving the bolts in until they stop, and then I'm going to go around and torque everything. Now this isn't required at all, but it's something that I like to do. And that's, once I've got the cases together and everything's torqued down, take a rag and some brake cleaner, flip the cases up, and just go around and wipe off the excess gasket maker. When you're building an engine, it's always very important to Loctite critical bolts, which in an engine is most bolts. There's not too many bolts that you'd like to have come loose while you're riding, but there are a select few that you definitely can't have come loose. For that, Loctite. Same thing, low torque setting, just saves a little bit of time, and you can feel if you're cross-threading it. If that's something that you struggle with, don't use an impact. But I've kind of got the feeling of whether or not I'm about to cross-thread something. So like I said, I do that just in the interest of time, but what I'll do is run it in, go grab the torque wrench, and torque it to the correct spec once it's bottomed out. So once you've got your cases together and you've got your shift selector in, it's not a bad idea to run through the gears real quick and make sure you did it right. Right now we're in neutral. That's first, neutral, second, third, and fourth. Perfect. Because if you have an issue, you'll catch it now. Save yourself a lot of time. Now I should clarify, I did say that this was a 4-speed shift drum. This is also a 4-speed shift drum. This is the stocker, and this is neutral, first through fourth. This is out of an L, which is first, neutral, second, third, fourth. So this eliminates neutral being all the way at the bottom. I just like it better because I'm used to a big bike, so I went ahead and swapped that out while I was in here.
So I decided I wasn't going to do anything crazy as far as coating the engine. One thing I did do was Cerakote this engine cover black. The reason I decided to do this cover and not the other cover is because this cover is right next to your boot and the rear brake pedal, and I figured it would get scuffed up really badly after a few rides or one good fall. But I decided to do this one black because it actually has stock. It comes with this black cover that protects it from your boot. So I decided to do all black and kind of match that. I felt like it gave it a cool look. Alright, so now we're getting to the good part. Here we have a 143 piston from TB Parts. This is pretty self-explanatory, but if you're new at putting bikes together and doing top ends, this is a nice little trick. Just rip a hole in a paper towel and put it over the rod. When you go to put the circle clips in the piston, it's not very hard to drop one down in the engine, and then you're stuck fishing it out for the next 20-30 minutes. So if you put a paper towel in there, save yourself a lot of headache if you do drop one. Also, when building an engine, oil is your friend. Oil everything that you can. Wrist pin, top of the rod, make sure you got the piston going the right way. Perfect. So this 143 kit that I got from TB Parts comes with all the gaskets, cylinder, and a piston. Highly recommend that you check them out if you're looking into doing something like this for your 110. I've used them before. Very good parts. A little bit cheaper than some of the other brands out there, but really good quality. Alright, so this is what I was talking about with the cylinder. As you might be able to see, yeah. So obviously I vapor blasted this whole engine. Kind of looks dirty from all my fingerprints, but I'm going to clean that up. Anyway, this is like a sandblasted look. This is a PBR cylinder that came with the kit that I bought, and it's like a very dull sandblasted look. It definitely doesn't match the head too well. So what I'm going to go ahead and do real quick before I put this thing on, vapor blast it. So I'm going to give you a nice little before. How about that? Now all we have to do, put a little bit of oil in the cylinder, get ourselves a clean paper towel, and wipe it out. This is something you want to do on every rebuild, whether it's a new cylinder or not. Just go ahead and put some motor oil on a paper towel or put it in the cylinder and wipe this thing out with a rag. It's going to get all the crap out of your cylinder, whether it's dust, dirt. The oil just absorbs it right into the paper towel. And it also helps lubricate it. Matter of fact, I'm going to do a little bit more. Wipe that in with my finger just to lube everything up. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on the piston and ring area. Because for the first few seconds that the bike runs when you start it, it's not going to get oil yet. Now last, but definitely not least, we've got the cylinder head. I went ahead and put new valves in it, obviously vapor blasted it. Went through, ported, polished. You got a ported intake, ported exhaust, give it a little bit more horsepower. I still think the V2 head from T-Bolt's probably a better option, just because it's got roller rockers instead of these rocker arms that it comes with. These don't have bearings in them where the V2 head does. So I would say that that's probably a better option, but for the stock head, this thing's going to run pretty good. We're almost back together. Only a few things left to do. Put the cam gear on there, adjust the valves, it should be done. So these are new valves, and I also cut the seats, so these are out of adjustment. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen the valve adjusters. Luckily on these bikes, there's no shims, which makes it so much easier to adjust. You want to make sure that your flywheel's at top dead center. Go ahead, take the T-handle, stick it through there. Perfect. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how to set the timing, definitely refer to your manual. This is by no means an exact tutorial of how to do it. Might give you a small idea, but there's just some things only a manual can explain. Alright guys, so being the amateur filmmaker that I am, the camera died while I was finishing this thing up last night, but that's okay. All we had to do was throw the carburetor and air filter on there and it was ready to go. So before I end this episode, I'll give you guys a final run through of the engine and let you guys take a little bit closer of a look at it. So here she is, guys, the final product, our KLX143. As you can see, we've got the BVR cylinder on there with the 26mm Mikuni carburetor and the T-bolt air filter that comes with the 143 kit. It also comes with this little intake, which is a slightly bigger diameter than stock and also accommodates for the Mikuni carburetor. I'm pretty happy with how this thing turned out with all the vapor blasting and Cerakote work. I did go ahead and order a new cover for the ignition cover. I just think, I mean, for $12, it made sense to get a new one. So anyway, that should be in a couple days, and I'll throw that on there. But other than that, man, this thing is ready to rip. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this episode. If you made it this far in the video and you're enjoying the content, feel free to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I know it's a bit of a longer, tedious episode and it's not for everybody, but if you're like me and you enjoy the technical stuff, hopefully you've enjoyed this video and are looking forward to part 3. Within the next week, the frame should be back from powder coat and we can start throwing this thing back together. I still am waiting on a few parts to come in for that, but I'm sure they'll all be here within the next 4 or 5 days. So anyway, we'll see you guys in part 3. Peace.